The key still worked. That was the first thing Patrick noticed. He had half expected Naomi to change the locks. He had even prepared for it, running through scenarios in his head on the flight home, rehearsing the calm, reasonable voice he would use to explain everything. He had a plan. He always had a plan. That was what made him good at business, good at maneuvering, good at keeping two worlds spinning at once without either one knowing about the other. Renee stood behind him on the porch, one hand resting on her round belly, the other gripping the handle of her carry-on bag. She was 29 weeks pregnant, tired from the flight and trying to look confident. Patrick had told her this would be simple. He had said Naomi would understand. He had said a lot of things. The door swung open. The house was silent. Not the quiet of a woman in another room or the hush of midday while someone napped. This was a different kind of silence, the kind that is weight, the kind that presses against your eardrums and makes you stop walking. Patrick stepped inside. The living room was empty. Not just empty of people, empty of everything. The cream sectional sofa that Naomi had spent 3 weekends choosing was gone. The large canvas prints she had commissioned from a local artist, the ones she said made the room breathe, were gone. The glass coffee table, the standing lamp with the brass finish, the row of framed photos along the entry hall wall, all of it, gone. Patrick walked further in. His shoes echoed on the hardwood floor. The dining room, bare. The wall where Naomi had built a gallery arrangement of her grandmother's portraits, bare. The kitchen, the copper pots she had collected over the years, gone. The herb garden she kept on the windowsill, gone. Even the curtains she had sewn herself in the first year of their marriage, gone, leaving the windows bare and staring like open eyes. "Patrick," Renee said softly from behind him, "what is this?" He didn't answer. He walked to the bedroom. The bed frame they had shipped from a furniture maker in North Carolina. Gone. Her vanity, her books, the little velvet armchair she would curl up in to read on Sunday mornings. Gone. His clothes were still in the closet. Only his. His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. His business partner, Jonah. He let it ring. It buzzed again, this time the bank. Then a number he didn't recognize, which turned out to be the property management company handling their investment property on Holly Street. He stared at the notification. Why would they be calling on a Saturday? The phone buzzed a 4th time. Jonah again, this time with a text message that read, "Call me now. Something is wrong with the company shares. There is a new holding entity I've never heard of and our deal is frozen." Patrick sat down on the floor of the empty bedroom because there was nowhere else to sit. He called Naomi's number. It rang once and went to voicemail. He called again, voicemail. He sent a text, "Naomi, where are you? What happened to everything in the house?" No reply. From down the hall, he could hear Renee crying quietly. She had figured out what he had not yet allowed himself to say out loud. This was not a woman who had left in anger. This was not a woman who had packed a bag and driven to her mother's house. This was a woman who had planned, prepared, and executed with a level of calm precision that Patrick had never once anticipated. He had spent 2 weeks on a beach, thinking he was the one with a plan. He had come home to find out that Naomi had a better one. The bank's voicemail informed him that activity had occurred on the joint account, legal, authorized activity, executed by the co-account holder. The property management company left a message stating that the Holly Street property had completed a sale at full market value, with all proceeds distributed according to ownership records. Patrick pressed his back against the wall of his empty bedroom and closed his eyes. Outside, the sun was bright and indifferent. Inside, the house had nothing left to say. He had come home to tell Naomi it was over. She had already finished the sentence for him. 14 days earlier, Naomi had no idea that everything was about to change. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of slow, ordinary Tuesday that doesn't announce itself as important. Patrick had already left for what he called an early flight, a 2-week business development trip to Miami, he had said. Meetings with investors, site visits, the usual. He had kissed her on the cheek the way a man kisses a piece of furniture he has stopped noticing, and walked out with his suitcase. Naomi had clients to call and a design presentation to finish. She had learned years ago not to count on Patrick's presence, not to rearrange her schedule around his. Their marriage had settled into something comfortable and quiet, the way a fire settles into embers. She had told herself that was normal. That was maturity. That was what happened after 8 years. She gathered his dry cleaning to drop off later that day. His gray blazer was draped over the back of the dining chair. He always forgot something. She checked the pockets the way she always did before taking clothes in, because the last time she hadn't, a dry cleaning receipt had turned into a full investigation by the front counter staff into a stain that turned out to be ink. She found the hotel receipt first. The Sunridge Resort, Miami Beach. Check-in date the same day Patrick had left. Suite for 2 paid in advance. Complimentary champagne on arrival. She stood very still. Her mind did what minds do in moments like that. It began constructing explanations. Maybe a client, maybe a colleague, maybe it meant nothing. Maybe she was being paranoid. She had been called paranoid before by Patrick in arguments she had eventually let go of because she was tired of fighting. But the receipt said suite for 2. She put the blazer down and went to her phone. She opened Patrick's contact information. She knew his passwords. They had shared everything in the early years and never bothered to change that, and she scrolled through his recent calls. There was a number saved only as R, called 3 times the day before he left, twice the week before that. She dialed the number from her own phone. It rang 4 times and went to a voicemail recording. A woman's voice, bright and young. Renee. That was the name on the voicemail greeting. Naomi sat down at the dining table. She searched the name Renee along with Patrick's company name. Nothing obvious. She searched Renee on Instagram, adding the word Miami. 3 accounts came up. The second one matched, a woman with a bright smile who worked in property development and had been posting regularly for the past several months. Naomi scrolled. The account was partially public. There were photos of Miami sunsets, restaurant dinners, spa days. And then, starting about 5 months back, there were the pregnancy posts. A growing belly. Captions like, "Growing my greatest adventure and everything I ever wanted is already on its way." Naomi scrolled further. There was a baby shower post from 3 weeks ago. The venue was a rooftop restaurant with pink and white balloons. The floral arrangements were expensive. In the background of one photo, Naomi could see a sign that read, "Welcome, baby girl." She looked at the payment tag on the baby shower post. One of the event sponsors had been tagged, and in the caption, the hostess thanked everyone who had contributed, including the one who paid for the flowers and the venue with, as she jokingly wrote, his black card ending in 7742. Naomi looked at the card number on the receipt in her hand. It ended in 7742. That was their joint account card. Patrick had paid for his mistress's baby shower with money that was half Naomi's. She put the receipt down on the table very carefully, the way you put something fragile down when you are not sure what you are going to do next. She looked at the kitchen she had renovated 2 years ago, the countertops she had selected, the backsplash she had tiled herself over a long weekend. She looked at the life she had built inside these walls. Then she picked up her phone and called Tara. "I need you to come over," she said, "and bring coffee, a lot of it." "What happened?" "I found something. I need to think out loud, and I need someone with a clear head to stop me from doing something I shouldn't." Tara was there in 20 minutes. Tara sat across from Naomi at the kitchen table and read through everything. The receipt, the screenshots Naomi had taken of Renee's Instagram, the transaction history from their joint account that Naomi had pulled up on her laptop, scrolling through 5 months of payment history and finding things she had missed before. Restaurant charges in Miami on weekends Patrick claimed to be at conferences. A jewelry store charge in December, right before Christmas, for an amount that matched no gift Naomi had received. A spa charge last Valentine's Day when Patrick had told her he had a work dinner and couldn't make their reservation. Tara didn't say anything for a long time. She just scrolled and read. When she was done, she set the phone down and looked at Naomi. "How are you doing?" she asked. "I'm fine," Naomi said. Tara studied her. "You're not crying." "No," Naomi agreed. "That either means you're in shock or you're thinking." "I'm thinking," Naomi said. She had sat with the receipt for 2 hours before calling Tara. In those 2 hours, she had passed through every stage of what she expected to feel: the disbelief, the rising heat of betrayal, the pull toward the phone to call Patrick and unleash every word she had. She had felt all of it, acknowledged it, and then made a choice. Emotion was a luxury she could not afford right now. Not because she didn't feel it, but because she could see clearly that acting on it would cost her more than swallowing it. Patrick controlled most of their finances. He managed their property portfolio. He ran the real estate development company she had co-invested in using her own inheritance, $300,000 she had received after her mother's passing 4 years ago. He had convinced her it was the smart move. She had believed him. She had trusted him, and in doing so had handed him leverage she now had to get back before he returned. "You have 2 weeks, Tara said, reading her thoughts, "while he's gone." 11 days now, Naomi said, "and I need every one of them." Tara leaned forward. "What do you want to do? And I mean, what do you actually want, Naomi? Not what you think you should want. What do you actually want?" Naomi looked at her steadily. "I want to leave," she said. "I want to leave in a way that he cannot undo, cannot appeal, cannot talk his way out of. I want everything I am legally entitled to, and I want him to come home to nothing." Tara nodded slowly. "Then you need an attorney." "I already found one," Naomi said. She turned the laptop around. "Gloria. She specializes in high-asset divorce and financial recovery. Her firm is downtown. I have an appointment tomorrow morning at 9. Tara blinked. "You already found an attorney." "I told you I'm thinking." They sat together for a while longer. Tara ordered food. They ate and talked through the timeline, going over each asset, each account, each piece of the life that Naomi was about to dismantle with the same precision she used when she demolished a room before redesigning it. You had to clear everything first. You had to strip it down to the bones before you could build something beautiful. Around midnight, Tara put her hand over Naomi's. "He doesn't deserve you," Tara said. "And I want you to know that whatever you feel later when it hits you, I will be there." Naomi squeezed her hand. "I know," she said, "but right now I need to be steady." She was. The next morning, she drove downtown and walked into Gloria's office with a folder of documents, a calm expression, and a very specific plan. Gloria was the kind of lawyer who made you feel, the moment you sat across from her, that you were already safe. She was methodical, precise, and had been handling complex divorce and asset cases for over 2 decades. She had seen everything. She was not surprised by Naomi's story. She was, however, impressed by how organized Naomi was when she told it. Naomi had brought a printed summary of their joint assets, a list of accounts with approximate balances, documentation of her 30% investment stake in Patrick's company, complete with the original transfer agreement she had signed 4 years ago, and screenshots of the transactions she had found troubling. She had highlighted the relevant items in yellow and paperclip sections by category. Gloria looked through the folder for several minutes without speaking. Then she looked up. "Tell me about the company shares," she said. Naomi explained. 4 years ago, Patrick's real estate development firm had been struggling to close a major project. He had needed a capital injection quickly and did not want to bring in outside investors who would want a seat at the table. Naomi had used her inheritance, $300,000, converted into a 30% ownership stake, formally documented, filed with the state, and registered in her name. She had not been listed as an active partner in the day-to-day operations, but her ownership was real, legal, and undisputed. "He never tried to buy you out?" Gloria asked. "No, he never seemed concerned about it. I think he forgot it was real," Naomi said quietly. "Or he assumed I would never use it." Gloria made a note. "You can legally transfer or sell those shares. They are yours. However, and this is important, we need to move carefully, because if it looks like dissipation of marital assets, it can complicate the divorce. But since those shares came from your personal inheritance and were formally documented in your name, the argument for protection is strong." "What are my options?" Gloria outlined them one by one. Naomi could transfer her shares to a holding company, which would both protect them from being classified as marital assets in Patrick's favor and give her full control over any future sale. Regarding the investment properties, both she and Patrick were listed as equal co-owners on the deeds, meaning she could list and sell her share, or petition for a partition sale, but the cleanest move would be to list jointly, which she was allowed to initiate as co-owner without his active signature if he was unreachable. Regarding the joint accounts, each co-holder had full legal access. Naomi was entitled to withdraw her half. "What about the house?" Naomi asked. "We can file for divorce and request a partition judgment on the house. Given that you are not asking for him to return to it, and since you have no children together, the process is relatively clean. You are not trying to take what isn't yours. You are simply taking what is." Naomi sat with that for a moment. "I want to be gone before he comes back," she said. "I don't want to be standing in that house when he walks in with her. I don't want to have that conversation. I just want him to find nothing." Gloria studied her. "Then we move quickly. I'll set up the holding company today. We'll list the Holly Street property immediately. It's in a strong market and should move fast. The account transfer you can handle on your own. I'd recommend moving exactly 50% of the joint balance to your personal account. Not a dollar more. That protects you from any bad faith claim." "And the divorce filing?" "We file the day before he returns. That way when he walks in, the papers are already prepared. He'll be served the moment he sets foot in the state." Naomi nodded. "Then let's begin." They worked through the rest of the appointment, building the plan step by step. Naomi left 2 hours later with a clear list of actions, a timeline, and the first real feeling of control she had experienced in days. She sat in her car in the parking garage for a few minutes before driving home. Then she straightened her back, started the engine, and went to work. The holding company took Gloria's firm less than 24 hours to establish. By Wednesday evening, it existed on paper, a clean, legitimate legal entity registered in the state, with Naomi as the sole principal. By Thursday morning, the transfer of her 30% stake in Patrick's real estate development company had been formally initiated and was pending state filing confirmation. Naomi went to the office of a real estate agent she had worked with before, a woman named Mistress who sold properties with quiet efficiency and no drama. Naomi told her she needed to list the Holly Street investment property immediately, at full market value, no negotiation games. Mistress pulled comparables and confirmed the asking price that afternoon. The listing went live Friday morning. The first offer came in Saturday by noon. It was clean, full asking price. Buyers pre-approved, closing in 18 days. Naomi called Gloria from the parking lot of a coffee shop and said, "The property is under contract." "Good," Gloria said. "How are you doing?" "I'm fine," Naomi said. And for the first time since she had found the receipt, she meant it without effort. On Saturday afternoon, she went to the bank. She sat at the desk of a branch manager who did not ask unnecessary questions, and she transferred exactly 50% of the joint savings balance into her personal account. She had already opened the account 3 days earlier, a simple, private checking account with no connection to anything she shared with Patrick. She watched the numbers move on the screen and felt something release in her chest. That evening, Patrick called. She answered on the second ring. "Hey," he said. He sounded relaxed. There was background noise, a restaurant or a bar. "How's everything?" "Good," Naomi said. She was sitting on the floor of the living room, surrounded by boxes she had been filling quietly all week. She had been packing in layers, the things that were clearly hers first, then the shared pieces that her attorney had advised she had legitimate claim to. "Work is keeping me busy." "Yeah, same here." A pause. "It's been a good trip, productive." She wondered if Renee was beside him. She wondered if he was using the word productive to describe something that had nothing to do with real estate. "That's good," she said. "I'm glad it's going well." "We need to talk when I get back," he said. The tone shifted slightly. "There's some stuff I've been meaning to bring up." "Of course," she said. "We can talk." They hung up 3 minutes later. Naomi sat on the floor with the phone in her hand for a moment, then set it aside and went back to packing. She was not angry at the call. She was not even sad. What she felt was something closer to clarity, the kind that comes when you have finally stopped hopping for something that was never going to be what you needed it to be. She had spent years in a marriage that had become a performance, playing a role she had not auditioned for, in a story that Patrick had been rewriting without telling her. She was done with that story now. She was writing a new one. By Sunday night, most of the boxes that contained her life were stacked neatly in the second bedroom. Her art, her books, her grandmother's china carefully wrapped in moving paper, her home office equipment, her personal files, her clothing. The shared furniture that Gloria had confirmed she had legitimate claim to, pieces she had purchased independently, items that predated the marriage or had been gifted to her, were tagged with small stickers for the movers who were coming Thursday. Patrick called again Monday evening. The second call was shorter. He sounded distracted, and in the background, clear as a knock on the door, Naomi heard a woman's voice ask Patrick what he wanted for dinner. Naomi did not flinch. "I have to go," she told Patrick. "I have an early client call tomorrow." "Sure," he said. "Talk soon." She hung up and began making dinner in the kitchen. She was about to leave forever. It was Wednesday evening, 2 days before Patrick was due home, when he video called her. Naomi was in the middle of dismantling her home office. She had disconnected the printer and was rolling the cord neatly when the phone buzzed on the desk. She looked at the screen. Patrick, video call. She set the cord down, went to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. She ran a hand over her hair, which was pulled back. She looked steady. That was what she needed to look like. She answered. Patrick's face filled the screen. He was sitting somewhere bright, a hotel room probably. He had his easy smile on, the one he deployed when he wanted to seem approachable. "Hey," he said. "I wanted to catch you before your day got busy tomorrow." "I'm here," she said. "You look different," he said, studying her. "I got some sleep," she told him. "What's going on?" He talked for a few minutes about the trip, a deal that was almost closed, a meeting that had gone better than expected. He was building towards something. She could hear it in the way he paced his words. He wanted to tell her something and was not sure how to lead into it. She waited. Then the camera shifted slightly. He moved the phone, adjusting his position on whatever he was sitting on, and for a moment the background came into full view behind him. A hotel room. A suitcase open on the bed, and at the edge of the frame, just visible, a woman in a white robe walking toward the window, her profile unmistakable, her belly round and heavy under the fabric. Patrick did not notice that Naomi could see her. He was looking at his own image in the phone screen. Naomi held her expression completely still. "I think we need to have a real conversation when I get back," Patrick said. His voice had dropped into the register he used when he was about to say something he had rehearsed. About us, about where things are. I agree, Naomi said. There are some changes coming, he said. I just want you to be prepared. I appreciate you saying that, she told him. Her voice was smooth, even, warm, with absolutely nothing behind it. He looked relieved. He had expected perhaps some resistance, a question, a confrontation, at least a change in her expression. Instead, she was calm. He took her calm as acceptance. She could see it in the way his shoulders released, the way he smiled a little. He had no idea that the calm was not submission. It was conclusion. I get back Friday, he said. We'll talk then. I'll be ready, she said. He hung up. Naomi set the phone face down on the empty desk and stood in the gutted office for a moment. She looked at the rectangle of slightly darker paint on the wall where her framed degrees had hung. She looked at the bare shelves where her design books had lined up for years, their spines organized by color and subject. She felt nothing sharp. No rage, no grief. Just the quiet finality of a door swinging shut on something that had been broken for a very long time. She picked up the phone and sent a text to the movers, still confirmed for tomorrow at 8 a.m. Everything will be ready. Then she texted Gloria, he called tonight. He told me to be prepared for changes. I told him I would be ready. File the divorce petition tomorrow as planned. Gloria's reply came within 10 minutes, already drafted. Filing first thing tomorrow morning. Everything is in order. Naomi put the phone in her pocket, went back to the living room, and finished packing the last of her things. The house was nearly hollow now. She walked through each room one more time: bedroom, kitchen, dining room, living room, the small sunroom off the back where she used to sit with her morning tea and her design sketches. She did not linger in any of them. She said no goodbyes. She had already left. The physical act of moving out was just the last formality. The movers arrived at 8 in the morning on Thursday, exactly as scheduled. There were 4 of them, professionals who moved efficiently and without commentary. Naomi had everything labeled, organized, and ready. They worked through the house in under 4 hours. The furniture she had purchased before the marriage went first. The mahogany dresser she had bought with her first paycheck from her design firm, the reading chair, the bookcase from her old apartment that she had never been able to part with. Then the pieces Gloria had confirmed were legitimately hers under the asset documentation she had provided. The dining table she had purchased using funds from her own business account 3 years ago. The bedroom furniture set she had bought when Patrick had insisted on renovating the master, and then contributed nothing to the actual purchase. Her art collection came down from the walls carefully, each piece wrapped in protective paper. She had built it over 12 years, prints and originals from artists she had found at markets and gallery shows, pieces that had never been Patrick's taste, and that he had tolerated in the same indifferent way he had tolerated most of her passions. She did not look at the empty walls after the pieces came down. She focused on the next thing. Her grandmother's china came out of the cabinet in the dining room, every piece individually wrapped. Her books were boxed by the end of the first hour. Her home studio equipment, lighting, backdrops, material samples, her drafting tools, filled 3 boxes on their own. By noon, the trucks were loaded and gone. Naomi stood in the empty house one final time. It looked larger without everything in it. Odd how a room could feel bigger once it had been cleared of everything that made it mean something. The walls were slightly discolored in places where the art had hung, lighter patches on the paint. The floors had indentations where the furniture had rested for years. The house remembered that people had lived here, even when the people were gone. She did not feel what she had expected to feel. She had prepared herself for grief, for the wave of it that she had been holding back all week to break over her now that the work was done. But it did not come, not in that form. What came instead was something quieter. She felt released. She walked out of the back door. the way she always had, and locked it behind her. She left the key on the kitchen counter where Patrick would find it. She drove to her new apartment. It was on the fourth floor of a building 3 neighborhoods away, with large windows that faced east and a kitchen she had not yet arranged. Tara was already there when she arrived, having gotten the spare key the week before. She had brought groceries, flowers for the windowsill, and a bottle of sparkling cider. "How are you doing?" Tara asked, watching Naomi walk through the door with the last bag from her car. "I'm doing well," Naomi said. And she was. She stood in the empty apartment while the mover's second trip brought her furniture in through the service elevator, and she began thinking, not about Patrick, not about Renee, not about what had been broken, but about how she wanted this space to look, what she wanted the light to do in the mornings, where her grandmother's china would go. She spent the rest of the day unpacking and arranging with a focus that was almost meditative. By evening, the apartment was beginning to take shape, her bookshelves organized, her art leaning against the walls waiting to be hung, her kitchen laid out the way she had always wanted one, logical, clean, entirely hers. Tara stayed until 9, helping, and left with a long hug at the door. Naomi sat on her reading chair in her new living room and listened to the city outside her window. She was not happy yet, not entirely. There were things that would take time. The full weight of what had happened would find her eventually, she knew that, and she would let it when it came. But tonight she felt something clean and sure beneath her feet. She had not run. She had not begged. She had not waited for him to decide her worth. She had decided it herself. She slept well that night for the first time in 2 weeks. Patrick and Renee landed at 11 in the morning on Friday. He had checked his messages 3 times on the flight and felt the particular restlessness of a man who had something planned that he was eager to execute. He had decided, somewhere over the Atlantic, that the conversation with Naomi would go smoothly. He had told himself the same story several times now, the one where Naomi accepted the situation with dignity, where the divorce was uncontested and quick, where he and Renee settled comfortably into the house within a month. He was a man who had always been good at convincing himself of things. Renee was quiet during the drive from the airport. She had tried once 2 days ago to ask Patrick whether Naomi actually knew about her, whether the conversation had already happened, whether this plan was as solid as Patrick insisted it was. He had told her not to worry. She had tried to stop worrying. She had not entirely succeeded. The neighborhood looked the same as he'd left it. Quiet, upscale, the kind of street where people kept their lawns neat and their complications private. He pulled into the driveway. Naomi's car was gone, which he noted but didn't dwell on. She had clients, she had work, she was probably out. He got the bags from the trunk, handed Renee her carry-on, and walked to the front door. The key turned. He stepped inside. The silence hit him first. He had expected to find Naomi in the kitchen, or upstairs, or at her desk in the back office. He had expected the smells that always lived in this house, the particular scent of her candles, the faint undertone of the wood oil she used on the floors. He had expected, at minimum, furniture. The house was hollow. He walked through it the way a person walks through a place they are no longer sure they recognize, slowly, looking at everything, processing each room's emptiness as a separate shock. The living room, the dining room, the kitchen, the bedroom. He stood in the doorway of her home office, which was stripped bare down to the carpet indentations and the lighter patches on the wall. He called her name into the silence. Nothing answered. He called her phone. It rang once and went to voicemail. His voice was still controlled when he left the message. He was still operating on the assumption that there was a rational explanation. Perhaps she had known he was bringing Renee and had gone somewhere temporarily. Perhaps she had decided to make a statement. He thought he could still manage this. He called again. Voicemail. He texted, "Naomi, I'm home. Where are you? What happened to everything?" The message showed as delivered, no response. He walked back through the empty house. In the kitchen on the counter he found her key. Just her key, placed in the center of the counter, no note attached, nothing dramatic, no final words. Just the key. Clean and simple, the way you leave something when you are done with it. His phone rang. Jonah. "Where have you been?" Jonah's voice was tight. "I've been calling since yesterday." "I just landed," Patrick said. "What's wrong?" "What's wrong is that 30% of our company now belongs to an entity called Northline Holdings, which I have never heard of and which you never mentioned. Our financing partners got notification of the ownership change, and they have paused our project approval pending a review. Do you know what that means for our closing date?" Patrick went very still. "What?" "Your 30%, the investor shares. They've been transferred, Patrick, legally transferred, filed with the state 2 days ago. Did you not know about this?" He didn't answer. He was already thinking about who held those shares. The next call was from the bank. He stood in the empty kitchen and listened to an automated notification about account activity on his joint account, authorized by the co-holder, within the co-holder's legal rights. Half the balance gone. The property management company called while he was still processing the bank notification. The Holly Street property had closed, sold, all funds distributed per ownership records. Patrick sat down on the floor of the kitchen because there was nowhere else to go. That was where the process server found him, 40 minutes later, when Patrick answered the door in a daze. The man handed him an envelope and said his name in a routine voice, the voice of a person who had done this many, many times. Patrick stood in the doorway of his empty house, holding a divorce petition, and stared at the street. The days that followed were not kind to Patrick. He hired an attorney, a man named Burrows, recommended by Jonah, known for aggressive divorce litigation. Patrick sat across from him and explained the situation with the confidence of a man who believed he had been wronged, a man who expected the legal system to agree with him. Burrows listened. He reviewed the documents Patrick brought, the property deeds, the company incorporation papers, the joint account records. He asked a series of questions, each one a little more precise than the last, and with each question, Patrick watched something in the attorney's expression settle into a careful, professional neutrality. "The company shares," Burrows said finally. "The 30%, you're telling me these were held in her name." "As an investment," Patrick said. "I never thought." "Did she use her own funds to acquire them?" "Her inheritance, yes, but—" "Then those are her separate property, Mr. Adair. The transfer was legal. Challenging it will be very difficult, particularly since the original investment was independently funded and formally documented." Patrick was silent. "The account withdrawals were exactly 50%, Burrows continued, which is her legal right as co-holder. There is no fraud here. There is no theft. Every action taken was within her legal authority as a co-owner of the assets." "She planned this," Patrick said. "While I was gone, she protected her assets during a period of marital breakdown," Burrows said evenly, "which is what attorneys advise clients to do." He paused. "Did you tell her you were leaving her before you left?" Patrick looked at his hands. "No," he said. "Did she have reason to believe the marriage was ending?" He thought about the phone calls, the ones where she had sounded so calm, so unbothered. He thought about the last video call, her expression perfectly composed while Renee walked through the hotel room behind him. She had known exactly what she was doing. She had been 10 steps ahead of him the entire time. Back at the house, his house now, though it felt like neither of theirs, Renee was struggling. She had moved her essentials in from the hotel, but the house was empty. They had no furniture. They had no kitchen set up. She was 29 weeks pregnant, exhausted, and living in a hollowed shell that smelled faintly of wood polish and absence. She had thought, when Patrick described the plan to her in Miami, that she was moving into a life. She was moving into a problem. Patrick's business partner Jonah was furious. The pending development deal, a $40 million project Patrick had been cultivating for 2 years, was in jeopardy because the company's ownership structure had changed midway through the approval process. The financing partners had questions. The timeline had slipped. Jonah hired his own counsel to explore whether Patrick had violated his partnership obligations by failing to disclose or manage the shareholder situation. The meetings became hostile. The deal was rescheduled twice. Meanwhile, Gloria and Naomi's divorce case moved through the process with the efficiency of something well prepared. Patrick's team tried several angles, arguing that the share transfer constituted dissipation of marital assets, arguing that the property sale had been done without proper consent. Each argument ran into the same wall: documentation. Naomi had it. Patrick did not. The divorce was contested, which meant it was drawn out, which meant Patrick paid Burroughs for months of court filings and hearings, which cost money he was also spending on Renee's prenatal care, a new furniture package for the empty house, and the costs of a business deal circling the drain. Naomi did not attend any of the hearings in person when she wasn't required to. Gloria handled them. When Naomi did appear, she was composed and precise, answered every question directly, and offered no emotion for the other side to use. Patrick's attorney tried in one hearing to portray her as calculating and cold. The judge looked at the record. The record showed a woman who had protected her lawfully owned assets and filed for divorce. Nothing more. The financial settlement came down 4 months after filing. Patrick received his share of the remaining joint assets. He had argued for more. He did not receive more. The house went to a partition sale, the proceeds split per the deeds. The Holly Street property funds were gone, already distributed and spent. The company shares were no longer his to recover. Naomi's independent business accounts were untouched. When it was over, Patrick's attorney handed him a single sheet of paper summarizing the final order. He sat alone in a conference room and read it twice. Outside, Renee was in the waiting room, their newborn daughter in her arms. A car seat balanced on the chair beside her, a hospital bag still at her feet because she had nowhere better to put it. Patrick looked at the paper in his hands and thought about a kitchen counter with a single key on it, left in the center like punctuation at the end of a sentence. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Naomi's name appeared in a national interior design publication. The article was a profile of rising independent design firms across the country, the ones making noise through originality rather than scale. Naomi's firm, which she had launched 3 months after moving into her new apartment using funds from the settlement and the property sale, was featured on page 42 with 2 full-page photos of her most recent project, the complete redesign of a boutique hotel lobby in the city's arts district. The photos were striking: clean lines, layered natural textures, light flooding through tall windows that she had specifically negotiated to keep unobscured. The hotel owner had given her full creative control, and the result was the kind of space that made people stop walking and simply stand still for a moment when they entered. The article described her as precise, intentional, and unusually unafraid of simplicity. She read those words sitting at her kitchen table in her apartment, with the morning coming through her east-facing windows the way she had planned when she signed the lease. Her grandmother's china was arranged on the open shelves above the counter. Her art was hung. Every corner of the space was hers, thought out, deliberate, and built from scratch. Tara called that morning. "I saw the article," she said. "I may have cried a little." Naomi laughed. "Please don't." "I'm allowed. I know what it took." Tara paused. "You're doing really well, you know." "I know," Naomi said. She meant it. She had known she would be fine. That was never really the question. But there was a difference between knowing you would survive something and actually arriving on the other side of it, and finding that you were not just surviving but building something real. The firm had 3 major clients and 2 prospective ones. She had hired 2 junior designers who were talented and eager. She had a studio space she rented in a converted warehouse building with windows that ran the full height of the walls. She worked long hours and she did not mind them. She was making something that was entirely her own. Gloria called 2 weeks later with the final update on the estate matters. "The judgment has been fully entered and the last payments have cleared," Gloria said. "It's done, Naomi. Everything is settled." "Thank you," Naomi said, "for all of it." "You made my job easy," Gloria told her. "You came in prepared and you stayed steady the entire time. That is not as common as you might think." After she hung up, Naomi sat with the quiet for a moment. She allowed herself to think about Patrick, not with anger, not with the old grief she had expected to feel, but with something more like the distant clarity you feel when you look at a scar and remember the cut without feeling it anymore. She had heard things through the process, the small updates that filtered through legal channels without her seeking them. Patrick's development deal had eventually closed, scaled back, and restructured, but it had cost him in time, money, and his partnership with Jonah, which had not survived the tension. He was still in the house, the one from the partition settlement that had been assigned to him, with Renee and their daughter. She did not know whether they were happy. She did not think about it often. She did not hate either of them. She had learned in the months since that hate was expensive. It required attention and energy and space in your mind, and she had better things to do with all three. That evening, Tara came over and they made dinner together in Naomi's kitchen. They opened the bottle of sparkling cider that had been sitting in the back of the refrigerator since moving day, the one they had saved for the right moment. "Is this the right moment?" Tara asked, holding up the bottle. Naomi looked around her kitchen, at the china on the shelves, at the light coming through the window, at her friend standing in the space she had built from nothing, from the rubble of a life that had stopped being hers long before she left it. "Yes," she said, "this is exactly the right moment." They filled the glasses and clinked them together softly. Naomi took a sip and tasted something she had not expected. Not celebration, exactly. Not triumph in the sharp, performative way she had sometimes imagined it during the hardest weeks. What she tasted was something quieter and more durable than that. It tasted like herself. Like a woman who had looked at the worst thing that had happened to her and decided it would not be the last word. Like someone who had taken everything apart, stripped it down to the bones, and built something more honest in its place. She set the glass down and smiled at Tara, and it was the kind of smile that had nothing behind it but the truth. She was not waiting for anything anymore. She was already there.